Hey, so I guess you would call this our handwriting part 3. We've talked about the letter sizes, and then we went over our tall line down letters. We're starting with capital letters, and then I'll show you lowercase letters. So this is our group of letters that start with a leaning line or a diagonal line. And remember, I told you in the earlier video that I start with letters that start with a tall line down or a straight line because developmentally that is better to start with and sets up motor memory patterns for the stroke that the letter starts with. And I always start with uppercase letters. So you can see that all of these letters start with a leaning line. So a capital A is a leaning line down the other side, and a sleepy line across the middle. A V is a leaning line down and then a leaning line uphill. A W is a leaning line down, leaning line up, leaning line down, and leaning line up. For our X, we have a leaning line, and then we have to come back to the top, move over a little bit, and we have a leaning line going downhill backwards. So one going downhill backwards, you could say you're going down the slide. Y is a little different. You can actually make it a couple of different ways. You can do it like this. You start at the top and you do a leaning line from the top to the middle. And then you move over on the top and you do a leaning line from top to bottom. The other way that you can do the Y would be, it's still a leaning line letter. As we said, you could do this, okay? Or you can do this. It's like a V you have a leaning line down to the middle line and a leaning line up, which is like a V up in the top half of your line. And then a short stick or short tall line down. And so a lot of times I will draw lines on boards for the kids so they can see that if you write it this way, it's leaning line from top to middle, move over to the top, and a leaning line from top to bottom. A leaning line from the top to the middle, a leaning line up, and then a short line down. So either way for Y would be correct. Just depending on, you could have your child try it both ways, whatever is easiest for them. This will be the same way they will write it in lowercase. So, but again, whatever works best for them. Sometimes showing them that V in the top part helps. As I said before, the diagonal lines can be a little trickier. So I start with the tall line downs, and then do leaning lines, and then I'll go to circle C letters, which I will show you next. And then we have just a few letters that don't fit into one of those groups that we'll also go over.